All right, guys, I want to discuss a little bit about manual versus paddle shift. And I know manuals are bringing tons of money lately. I am normally typically, I'm going to have a manual in my garage if I'm buying an exotic car. I love manuals. I've even raced a manual, and I really prefer racing a manual transmission just because it gives me something to do. It's something you have to focus more on, and it makes it more difficult for someone else that's racing against you. If they make a mistake shifting, that's part of racing, to where, if you're all driving paddle shifts, it's not going to affect it as much. So part of racing a manual versus other cars that are manual, there's a lot you have to focus on. If you miss a shift, if you downshift improperly, things like that, it changes the outcome of a race. So to me, it just kind of adds more to the racing experience by having a manual transmission. But of course, everything's changed. I'm here to try to take away the stigma of paddle shift. And I never thought I would be that guy. I had the E-gear. I did a video and I drove Strat in the car, and we were talking about it. And it was amazing how much more manual a single clutch paddle shift car feels than you would think. And I'm going to discuss the comparables between a single clutch paddle shift and a manual transmission, because to me that they're really similar and they both feel very manual. When you shift, it feels like you're actually shifting the car. The dual clutch transmissions that I've driven and I've been in, it just doesn't feel manual. It feels more electric. Of course, you're the one shifting the car, but the way that it shifts, how smooth it is, to me, just isn't as fun. Now, of course, it's much better and much safer for these cars that are so fast now. You've got so much power going to the wheels that, a shift that has more of an abrupt nature can upset the car and cause more accidents. So I wouldn't doubt that going to dual clutch technology in all these newer supercars, and even there's a lot of cars that are super fast that aren't supercars. And so you put a dual clutch in there and it's going to be safer. There's probably less accidents. It's probably, huge for insurance claims, things like that. But also on a racetrack, dual clutch is going to be a lot better because it's smoother. And so if you're shifting, coming out of a corner or even mid-corner in some tracks, you're not going to upset the car. And so I understand when it comes to certain situations why a DCT is better. Of course, much faster. The cars have better times when they're going, 0-60, whatever. Everything's faster with dual clutch, but it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel as engaging. And to me, when I drive a car, I want that engagement factor. I want to feel like I'm the one driving the car. And I think that's why we are all, especially my generation that did learn how to drive manual transmissions growing up, that's part of who we are. That's part of driving a car. Just like racing, when you're racing a group of guys in manual transmission cars, it's like being on the street driving a manual transmission car. It takes skill, it takes knowledge, it takes patience. It takes time to learn how to drive that car fast or at its limit with a manual transmission. A lot more time than it takes with, a dual clutch transmission. I'm here to try to say that, a single clutch paddle shift car is quite similar to a manual transmission car. And it's a manual transmission. It just has an actuator in there, that's hydraulically operated, that when you shift it, it tells the transmission to shift. And you still get that abrupt nature. And quite honestly, I think it's almost more abrupt in the Scud. When I shift this car, if I'm at full tilt, it's abrupt. And it's actually really exciting. It's engaging. The downshifts are exciting. The downshifts are engaging. When it's not in auto mode, this car does have an auto mode. The E-gear in the Lamborghini I had did not. So the E-gear was you either shifted or you didn't. And if you didn't tell the car to shift, it did not shift. This car does have an auto mode, so it will shift on its own if you want to just kind of be lazy. But if you've got it out of auto mode, it's just like the E-gear. You have to tell the car what to do. So you get to pick your RPMs, you get to pick everything just like you would shifting a car with a stick, but it's just a paddle. I know it's different, but this is one car where I find myself not even torn about what decision I would make. There's already been comments about, hey, you should add a manual transmission to that. You know, there's a Scud that's already done that. Those guys did a great job. They said that it drives just like a typical manual. Of course, it is a manual transmission. Adding a stick to this car would probably be fantastic. But man, I'm in love with the paddle shift in this car. I love how fast this car shifts. I love how it feels when it does it. And so if I added a manual transmission to this car, I mean, Ferrari did it right. Ferrari made the right choice, the right decision on this car. And you know, the single clutch paddle shift cars, they were only built for a small period of time. So you know, especially in automotive history longevity, like it's a blip on the radar of how long these cars were built. So I am a proponent of telling everyone out there, if you're looking for an exotic car, and the difference is between, you know, a single clutch paddle shift and a manual, right now, single clutch paddle shift cars are a bargain. I mean, you can get a Murcielago with an E-gear in it for, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000 less than a Murcielago with a manual transmission. And I've owned both. And I'm telling you, the driving experience in both of them is phenomenal. And it's not lacking in the E-gear car. And I would say the same for this. Now, I've driven dual clutch cars, and like I mentioned, the dual clutch just really, I'm not a big fan of it. It is what it is. It's for the rest of history. It's going to go that way as long as we have, you know, fossil fuel burning cars, which isn't going to be much longer. But they feel very electric for, you know, for a gas burning car. Everything's going electric. You know, electric is just smooth, fast, amazing, cool. But, you know, you look on the timeline of history for automotive, you know, the automotive world and cars being made and everything, I have a feeling that single clutch paddle shift cars, they're not going to be slouches, you know, on value soon. And I don't think it's going to take long for everybody to start going, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a hydraulically operated manual transmission, and the E-gear can have issues, or the F1s can have issues with the pumps and things like that. But realistically, it's still pretty basic technology. It's nothing like dual clutch. It's nothing like, you know, the stuff that's coming out now. You know, right now, I feel like there's almost a stigma in my generation, and, you know, guys that are, you know, between 35 and up, you know, that feel like we have to have a manual transmission, especially because the younger generation that's coming up, most of them don't know how to drive a manual transmission, and the younger generation prefers, you know, a paddle shift car. And so there's like this ego that we have in my generation that's like, oh, I have to have a manual, I have to prove that I can drive a manual because these younger kids can't, and I'm cool, they're not, kind of a thing or something. But like I said, in my opinion, I think single clutch paddle shift cars should be valued just as much as manual transmission cars. You know, it was maybe 10 years that, you know, a single clutch paddle shift was popular and kind of the way to go. That's gone out the window. So it's just a small, cramped amount of time that these cars were built in. So very few cars with this type of transmission were realistically built. And, you know, it's gone forever. So if you're looking for a supercar, you know, drop the ego. You know, the E-gears are actually fun as hell. The F1 transmission, I am coming to find out, is actually a hoot, you know, and I don't know, man. In my opinion, I think these are going to be the value. Do you guys find the same thing? Maybe a lot of you guys are out there actually searching for cars right now already, thinking the same thing I am, that these cars are going to go up in value. Maybe you didn't hear it from me first, maybe you did. But these cars are a blast to drive, and I can't wait to take this thing out every single time I get in it. And honestly, there's a part of me that almost prefers the single clutch paddle shift cars now. The paddles are kind of cool, and you know, I don't have to push a clutch in, you know, and I'm getting older, my knees kind of hurt sometimes, and You know, pushing the clutch in a bunch is kind of a pain in the butt, especially in traffic. You know, I don't have a shifter in my way. So, you know, I don't know. There's some actual real benefits, even as a sports car guy, to have a paddle shift car. I don't know. So let me know what you guys think.